going to call this meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, May 20th, 2015, 6:30, but it is really 6:38. Okay, our invocation will be by Councilman Tejada.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for bringing us together as city leaders, as community, people in the community, to pray for our community and give us judgment, give us wisdom for the betterment of our community. Amen.
We have established a quorum here. Councilman Ortiz, Councilman Tejada, Councilman Guerrero, and Councilman Rodriguez. And Councilman Nieto will join us in about 20 minutes?
He said about 7.
About 7. Okay. Everyone will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge of flag. Can you close the door so we can see the flag? Yeah.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
At this time, do we have any citizen comments? Okay, if not, who wants to start? Fix it so it's,
I just turned it down because I didn't realize they had investigated. I just turned it on.
Don't fall asleep now that the lights are on. Well, Honorable Mayor, members of the council, Ms. Turner, thank you for having me here. For the record, my name is Victor Quiroga with Frost Bank Capital Markets, and we have the honor of representing you as our financial advisors. And with me is Jeff Kuhn from Fulbright Jaworski, the city's bond attorney. We're here to follow up on the conversation we started having last month about the restructuring of the 4A Corporation debt, or the Series 2010 bonds that are actually issued by the city, but it's revenues from the 4A are actually being used to repay that. So we brought you with revised and correct sales tax figures for the 4A Corporation, and also we brought forth 4 options for you for your consideration. And then we'll talk about the timeline towards the end. Before I get into this, on May 11th, I started sleeping a lot better after that day, because that's when Standard & Poor's called me and said that the city has received an upgrade. As you know, when we first issued publicly sold bonds in 2010, they rated us at an A-. But then with the deterioration of the finances since that time up to 2013, we decided to downgrade the city to a BBB, which was a 2-notch downgrade. But because of y'all's decision to implement or the turnaround plan and management's ability to work that plan and turn it around, they took note of that, saw that you all are now in the black with your fund balances. And so because of that, they decided to upgrade the city not only 2 notches, but 3 notches in this case. So right now, you're at a underlying rating, or that's your true credit rating, which is 1 notch better than what we actually got back in 2010. So I congratulate you on that, because I know that was a lot of tough decisions that the council had to make to get that plan going and rectify the financial position of the city. So what does that mean? Basically, this is a credit rating scale that's used by Standard & Poor's. You can see there, the most recent one was the BBB. That's where that BBB falls when you're looking at what we call investment grade bonds. Anything below that BBB-, it's a term that we use, and a lot of folks know that aren't even in the bond business, called junk bonds. And those are the ones that have very low credit rating, and they have to pay a lot in interest. But basically what this means is that the higher your rating is, the more money that you're going to save on your finances, because the bond investor is willing to give you a more competitive interest rate, because they feel their monies are going to get returned securely. And so you can see the A-, that's what we actually received in 2010, and then currently we're at the single A credit rating. when we market these bonds come June and July, we're actually going to try to get to that AA category there, and we could do that by buying a bond insurance policy, and basically we're paying somebody else by insurance policy to use their higher credit rating, just so that we could try to get the best interest rate possible for the city. But we'll talk about that towards the end of this presentation. These were some of the reasons, and I know you all received that report last week regarding why they decided to raise the rating of the city. But basically, first and foremost, it's the positive available fund balance for 2014 and the surplus that we expect for this current fiscal year, 2015, and of course, the implementation of the turnaround plan. Also,
Victor,
yes.
can you address that purchase of the insurance that you just mentioned right now?
Basically, the way that works is if we don't buy bond insurance, we'll have to sell these bonds using our own rating, which right now it's a single A right there. And so we could go to, we'll make applications to there's only about 3 different bond insurance companies. We'll make applications to them, and then they'll come and they'll analyze us and do their own credit analysis. And then they'll say, you know, for a certain one-time fee, they'll let us use their credit rating, which is going to fall in that AA category there. And so, so what we do as your financial advisors, we'll run what we call a cost-benefit analysis. We're saying that, you know, we know we're going to have to pay a fee to use their credit rating, but is the reduction in the interest rate going to be greater than that fee that we're paying? Typically, it is going to be greater, but that's just an analysis that we do just to make sure that we're not just paying a fee just to pay a fee and have that credit rating. So basically, by us using that higher credit rating from the insurance companies, it'll help us get a better interest rate as opposed to us selling the bonds by ourselves.
And how is that fee paid off?
That's just a one-time fee that's at closing. Is when it's just a one-time fee. It's not like.
Is it based off of how much we're willing to finance?
Yes, sir. It's going to be based off of actually your repayment term. The shorter the repayment term is, what we'll get to later, the lower that fee is, because they're only guaranteeing these bonds, let's say, for 15 years as opposed to 30 years. If I have to guarantee these bonds for a longer period of time, then I'm going to want to charge more because you're going to use my guarantee or credit for a longer period of time.
Is that fee,
I'm sorry.
is that fee something that is added to the closing cost of the bond, and
Yeah,
it's added to the bond?
Yeah, the way the fees are going to work, and then if we buy bond insurance, and I hope we do buy bond insurance because it actually does improve the total interest cost that you pay on these bonds. But basically, the fees, nothing is going to come out of the city's coffers right now, or the general fund. Just like if you go and get a mortgage, most of the time you're going to roll in those costs into that loan that you get. Same thing for bonds. What we're going to do is the costs associated with the financing here, they're basically just going to be rolled into the loan, and you don't have to write a check to me or Jeff or the bond insurance company. It's all going to just be within the package there.
What kind of amount are we looking at as a monthly?
It's going to range, the bond insurance policy itself could range anywhere from $20,000 to $45,000 in that range, but it's going to be dependent on the bids that come back to us. And so basically when we do the analysis, we're going to say, okay, if we get a bond insurance for let's just say $45,000, just use that high dollar amount. We want to make sure that the interest cost that we're saving by buying that bond insurance is going to be greater than that $45,000. And talking about, you know, nearly a $6 million transaction, typically that's going to, the savings that you generate over the life of the bonds is going to be more than that expense that you incur. But that's an analysis that we'll conduct for this.
But that's something that can be paid without having to roll it in, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're more than free and welcome to utilize any cash on hand to offset some of the expenses. But you know, 98% of the time, 99% of the time, folks are gonna just want to roll that in, just because cash is precious and they want to hold on to it. But you know, that's obviously y'all's decision. If you want to put in some cash into the transaction, you're more than welcome to do that. There's
Because
nothing.
then you're also going to be paying interest
Yeah, and that's a consideration too, yeah. And so, but if y'all are willing to release some cash and put it towards this transaction, basically, you could, you have the ability to do that. And if you don't, don't feel bad, because the vast majority of issuers out there, like I said, 98, 99%, if not more, just end up rolling in the fees into the loan. Is that right, man?
And normally, Victor, as you know, you'd be selling bonds probably at a premium.
Yes.
So you're gonna have excess proceeds to fund your escrow and to pay all these costs.
And so the last 3 bullet points here, just again, just due to the fact that you all made that tough decision and implemented the turnaround plan, or approved it, they also cited, because of that plan, now you're in a very different position financially, where they cited your very strong budgetary performance and flexibility, strong liquidity. But when these ratings, they always give you the good and the bad. And some of the things that we can't really control. We can't control the local economy. And when they say weak economy, that's just an offsetting factor that they use. Because when they look at you as a rating, they look at 2 things that you can control and things that you can't control. Since the turnaround plan was implemented, those are the things that you can control, and they give you credit for that and increase your rating. Stuff that you can't control is you can't control, which companies are coming here, how many people are moving into Floresville, what the cost of housing is, and property taxes and things like that, or the values. I'm sorry. And so that's just an offsetting factor. But I just wanted to give you the kind of the good that they had, and also the offsetting factor there. But again, being in South Texas, for a city our size, that's a pretty common comment that Standard & Poor's has. But again, congratulations. That was just very, I told Ms. Turner I started sleeping better, because it's going to make the process of issuing these bonds a lot easier. Now the bond insurance, when we get those bids in, because we're at a single A versus a triple B, that's going to be cheaper too, and also the interest rate that you get on the loan cheaper as well. This is a slide here, slide 5, that we've shown to you a couple of times. This is just basically looking at what we call self-supporting debt service by fund source. We're basically just identifying the general fund is responsible for a certain amount of debt. The 4A sales tax fund is responsible for another portion of the debt. Of course, the Series 2010 GO refunding bonds being one of them. And you can see there what we're going to take out and restructure, because that was never meant to stay that way. And then the 4B sales tax fund, these are the participating in that Series 2008 issuance, and so that's their debt right there. And so these are the corrected figures here. We're showing the sales tax trend for the 4A corporation and also the 4B corporation. We just wanted to show that. Of course, everything's based off of the 4A corporation sales tax. That's been the big question here for the past few years. In 2008, you can see there nearly $200,000, and I had a discussion with Ms. Moreno on the way here, because the 2014 figure, the $404,000, there's a slight discrepancy with what Ms. Moreno shows in her reports, about $396,000, and we figure out why. When she does her reporting, she looks at the fiscal year basis. When we generate these figures from the comptroller's office of the state, they show it on a calendar year basis, and so we're just kind of picking up different months. But overall, it's still very close, obviously. And so you could see there. But in total, the 2% that the city collects generate about $3.2 million. And so this is just of that 3.2. This is what the 4A and the 4B corporation receives from that amount. Okay, so now we're going into the heart of this presentation. These are now your restructuring options. We know that the next year's payment of $1.3 million was not intended to be there. At that point, we're going to be where we are here, just to see where the sales tax revenue is and what can we work with. And so I'm just gonna go here, this is very important, I just wanna go row by row and column by column, and if you have any questions, just stop me, but I'm gonna be, on purpose, just going very thoroughly on this one, because this is really the heart of your decision about how to restructure what term that we're gonna use for these bonds. And so there you can see that we have the annual 4A corporation sales tax collections, and here we're just assuming that it's the 2014 figures at that $404,000 in sales tax collection, or what is considered revenue that's available to pay debt and do other things. Then we're also showing your series 2007 debt payments for the 4A corporation. This is the issuance that they use to purchase the land where the community center is located on. And so that's the annual payments moving forward that the land is due, about $85,000 what we're paying on the land loan. Then the proposed 2015 bond, this is the restructuring of the 2010 bonds. Instead of a payment next year of $1.3 million, we need to restructure that to make it more affordable. Here, this is the one item that's going to change on each column that we're presenting here, but I'm just going to go down first. And then you can see your total debt service requirement for those two bond issuances, depending on what term that you choose for the 2015 restructured. And then the next row is what we call the cash flow shortfall. We know that our debt service is exceeding how much the 4A corporation is collecting in sales taxes, and so we're showing that to you. And as Jeff indicated last month, is that when we do these type of restructures or refinancings, in the documents, we have to show the Attorney General that we're setting certain parameters, and we're, number one, choosing which term we want to do. Do you want to do 15, 20, 25 year? But we also have to put in some other figures in there. Number one, how much of a loss, in this case, that we're going to incur here, and really, when you look at the present value cost, it should actually be a present value loss. Because that's just a calculation, where what we're doing here is we're comparing the 2010 issue and then now us having to restructure and extend that payment. Even though that 2010 issue wasn't ever meant to stay like that and have those elevated payments, but we still have to compare those two when we're presenting these documents to the Attorney General. And so when you see that loss row there right now, the present value loss, that's basically just us looking at the structure as it is right now, the 2010, which we know we're not going to do, the $1.3 million versus the new term, and it's all going to change on the term. The further you take out this new debt, or the restructuring, like say 30 years, the more quote unquote losses that you're going to incur as compared to the 2010 issuance that we currently have in the books right now. And so I'm just going to go column by column now. Looking at the 15-year term, let's say we decided that we wanted to restructure this and we want a new term on these bonds of 15 years. We know that the sales tax collections is just about $404,000. We know that the 2007 issuance is going to continue to cost us about $85,000. That's that land loan. And then if we wanted to do a 15-year term or 15-year repayment, each year the annual principal and interest payment for the next 15 years is going to be approximately $530,000 to cover the 2015 issuance. And you can see there that if you combine, when you add up the 2007 and the proposed 2015 term, the total debt requirement is going to be approximately $614,000. Well, of course, that's in excess or more than what we're actually collecting in the sales tax that the 4A corporation is bringing in. So basically, this is where the shortfall comes about in our cash flow. Our debt is more than what the sales tax is bringing in, so the shortfall for a 15-year term is going to be $210,000 that the city, if you chose a 15-year term, would have to come up with other sources of funds to make up the difference there. And then we'll look at, too, what that means in terms of pennies on the tax rate if you decide to go that route. But on a 15-year term, the present value loss that we have to show to the Attorney General in the documents as compared to the 2010 issuance is approximately $246,000. It's basically the interest cost loss that you're incurred because now you're stretching out the debt. Before it was going to be paid off here in the next 5 years, but really it never really was. It was just like a placeholder so we could get to this point and clear off some debt and then do the final restructuring here. And so that's the $246,000 quote-unquote loss that we have to show the Texas Attorney General.
Victor, one question. I notice on your revenue, that stays static throughout the 30 years. What do we show as an increase year after year? Is there a certain percentage that we could say that we've been collecting in 4A tax, or does that have to stay static?
No, I'm just trying to be conservative here, Councilman. I'll do, whoops, I think I passed it. Yeah, you can see here, you've obviously been growing with everything going on here in Texas and South Texas. But I just wanted to be conservative and use that, just assume that that $400,000 is going to be stable there for, you know, whatever, 15 or 30 years. But anything that continues to come in, it's just less that the general fund would have to come up with in terms of that shortfall. And so right now, just to be ultra conservative, I just, you know, you're just assuming that the sales tax stays the same. Yeah, any growth will be welcome because that's just less money that your general fund or the city has to come up with to make up that shortfall. And so now let's look at the 20-year. You can see all the numbers basically they stay the same, except because you're stretching it out even further, you're going to reduce the annual payment. So with a 20-year, instead of $530,000, you're looking at about $440,000 in annual payments, but you're tagging on an additional 5 years on that loan. And so there you can see your total debt requirement on an annual basis is going to be approximately $525,000 versus the $404,000 that we're going to collect in sales tax. And so the shortfall here is actually less, and it's going to be about $120,000 that the city would have to come up with other sources to come up with that shortfall there. And you can see there, as I was talking about earlier, the longer you stretch out this new debt, the more of a loss is going to be shown on the calculations, because we have to compare this again to the 2010 issuance. So in this case, we're gonna stretch it out 5 years, and our annual payments are going to be lower. Instead of $530,000, it's going to be $440,000. But if you look at the bottom figure there, because we're going to be in debt for 5 more years in the 15-year, it's going to increase the losses from $246,000 to about $370,000. Does that make sense? Okay, now looking at the 25-year, again, we're going to get, the loan is going to stretch out longer, so our annual payments are going to be smaller at $392,000. The shortfall will be less. It'll be about $73,000 that the city would have to come up with. And then the present value loss by extending that payment is going to be about $410,000. Again, we're tagging on more years on the term, so the more losses that is calculated. The 30-year there, as you can see, that has the lowest amount of shortfall on an annual basis, at least these initial years, while the sales tax is still about $400,000. And again, Councilman Tejada made a good point, is that if the sales tax grow and continue to grow, then that shortfall would be lower in future years. And so you can see here the shortfall in the 30 years, $47,000, but the loss is the greatest on that one because that's the longest debt at $410,000.
Well, there's no prepayment penalty, right? I mean,
The standard, because we're selling these publicly, the standard feature is, let's say we do a 20-year bond. The first 10 years, first 9 to 10 years are we're going to call what is called non-callable, and that's a standard feature that these bond investors really expect when they buy bonds, and that'll get you the best interest rate possible. But basically there, for the first 9 to 10 years, we won't be able to take away those bonds or really refinance them before that time.
only because they're amortized a certain way to where
Yes.
they
the investors are gonna receive a certain amount,
Mhm.
and that's why they did in the first place.
Yeah, that's right, and that's why we call it, what we call call protected, meaning that, you know, if they make this investment, that lender wants to feel some security that they're not gonna, that investment's not gonna be taken away from them immediately. And so what's standard in the municipal bond industry is that when you issue long-term bonds, 20 to 30 years or even 15, the first 9 to 10 years are gonna be call protected, meaning that we won't be able to take them back. And so that's why this decision is important here, because we won't be able to come back, you know, next year and then redo the transaction again. One option too that we'll negotiate with the underwriter, we'll run different numbers. Again, everything is just a cost benefit analysis that we run, is what if we ask the underwriter, can we shorten that 9-year term? Can we have a call option, maybe after, you know, 5 or 7 years, maybe a little bit shorter than the 10 or 9 years, just to give us that flexibility. They'll say yes, but they'll say, you know, but it's going to cost you a little bit more in your interest rate. Versus using that standard feature, because that's kind of what they expect typically when they first buy bonds. But that's something that we'll run when we start visiting with the underwriter.
Victor, can you tell me, when is the actual land bond done? Is that 2035 or 2037?
2037. That was initially a 30-year note, and that's something that Jeff and I are continuing to visit on and visit with the Attorney General. Is are there alternatives to try to take that out and refinance it as well? Unfortunately, we can't combine it with this restructuring here. But we're going to continue to kind of look for ways, because initially that has a higher interest rate of in excess of 7%. The reason why is because it was sold as what we call a taxable bond, meaning that unlike these, where the investor is going to get all this income, the interest cost that they're getting as income, they don't have to pay federal taxes on it, and so they'll pay us they'll provide us I guess a competitive interest rate. A taxable bond, which the land is right now, that doesn't, the investor doesn't get that tax exempt investment. All the interest costs that they're earning, they have to pay federal taxes on it too. So those interest rates are going to be higher because they don't get that benefit. The reason why it was taxable back in 2007 is because it was still at its infancy, and we were thinking, well, what if, you know, a private corporation comes in and manages it, or wants to build on that land or something. So we wanted to keep our options open. And you can only do that if those bonds are taxable. And so anyhow, that's something that Jeff and I will continue to look at and see if we could reduce that 85,000.
They're saying that it's still feasible for us to have somebody to manage it and take over the property itself?
Well, at this point, you know, that was the intent back in 2007, or the reasoning why. But at this point, there's been, I guess, you know, different, I guess, arrangements between the city and the Ford Corporation and that land and the management of that facility. And so, so here, you know, it'll be worth it to continue to look at, can we take this taxable 2007 issue, refinance it into a tax exempt type of loan, like the community center is going to be, and get an even better interest rate, and we could reduce that annual payment from 85,000 down lower, or even reduce the term too. If we want to, you know, continue paying on it until 2037, we could look at ways of reducing the rate and reducing the term too. But that's right now that's secondary. The first and primary thing is that 2010 restructuring, but we'll continue to look at that.
I think the confusion with the land is a land part and then the building itself. The building itself, because it's tax exempt bond, it limits what you can do. And then the land itself is what's available and is vacant right now. The land itself can be used if you can get into a party, and that's why they kept that going between the two. But the building itself, you can't manage that. That's what the people. So it seems like the 20-year rough math would come at about the same time the land's going to be sold on us to do that.
Are there any,
Got some questions?
any questions before I move on, ladies and gentlemen?
Is that the only?
I'm just making smart remarks.
Let me deploy on this wonderful thing.
we need to vote on this one?
Well, I mean, I want you to understand this, so, I mean, because you're gonna commit the city to either 15 to 20 years, I hope not 30 years. Because 25 years take you to the year 2040.
Okay, you and Connie need to tell us if, which one can we live with? Can we live with a 15-year? I would prefer 15 years to try to get it off as soon as possible, because it's not getting cheap.
Well, maybe that's a good, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna, maybe that's a good segue to the next slide, so we could show you what the impact would be to the city by covering the shortfall.
Let me say, Henrietta, we know what we're collecting in sales tax. We know what the payment is gonna be. What we don't know is the cost of operations of the building.
That's what we're
Next
gonna do in the next slide.
Is it? Okay.
Next
Yeah.
slide, you're
It's
very
high.
good.
Y'all are ahead of me there.
But the cost, the issue is that, you know, the sales is based on what we have going on right now.
Right now.
And if we had, say, the oil boom is actually increasing at this moment, to whereas the first part of the year, it had, you know, went skyrocketed down, layoffs and everything like that. We can probably be sitting on a sales tax lower than, you know, this year, lower than what it was last year. So that's not, you know, that's all presumed, not, you know, promised,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and just to keep in mind that the one changing factor on this chart is gonna be that top line, what the sales tax collection is gonna be moving forward, because you're right, it could be lower or it could be higher. And so that's the one changing part. The things that don't change, because we get fixed interest rate on this debt and loans, is the Series 2007 unless we refinance it, and then the term that you choose for the 2015 restructuring. Those are gonna stay constant. So if you choose a 20-year, for the next 20 years, you know your payment's gonna be about $440,000 per year. But what is gonna change moving forward, and we just don't know what it's gonna be, is gonna be your sales tax collections, that $400,000.
And what Victor is presenting right now is current collections. So that's actually what we receive for a calendar year. Sales tax can go down or they can go up.
The collection is not the tax.
That could-
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
What we're collecting.
Yeah.
What's coming into us.
Correct.
So that'll take us into the next slide, ladies and gentlemen. Here, this is a cash flow analysis, okay? So we looked at the first slide, the slide before this, where we were saying, okay, depending on which term we decide to use, what's going to be the quote-unquote loss, because we have to compare it between the 2010, because we have to show the Attorney General that. And so here, we know that there's going to be a shortfall. Well, what does that mean to the city's general fund if you decide to go that route and utilize those revenues to come up with the shortfall? Because either way, there's going to be a shortfall. It just depends on what term that you're going to choose. And so here, everything up top, starting from the cash flow shortfall up, is the same as the previous slide. Nothing changes. What changes, or what's new information, is how much in pennies through your INS tax rate do we have to raise it in order to cover that shortfall. But we're just looking again here, the difference between the sales tax revenue and the debt service that you owe on the 2007 and 2015 bonds. So we know that if we decided to do a 15-year restructuring, the shortfall that's going to exist, at least right now, would be $210,000. Well, what does that mean for the city? We have to come up with that money somehow. And so the easiest, not politically but financially, the easiest would be to increase your INS tax rate, because that's not subject to the effective tax rate calculation and rollback. To cover that $210,000, you would have to raise your INS tax rate by 7.4 cents per $100 valuation. And the way we calculate that is I'm just using the current certified values right now of $298 million. That's the property values that the city has to work with, and also a 95% tax collection rate. And so this is the way we calculate how much we have to set the INS tax rate higher in order to cover that $210,000 shortfall. And so that's what it would mean to the city. It would mean 7.4 tax rate increase from where you're at right now. Well, what does it mean to the homeowner? Here we just ran, just using a round number, $100,000. That's not the market value on the home, that's the taxable value after they account for the exemptions that they qualify for. So, because that's the value that they pay the taxes on. So, what does that increase of 7.4 cents mean to a homeowner for every $100,000 in taxable value? Well, that's going to be on a monthly basis an increase of about $6.17 to cover that 7-cent tax rate increase and to cover that shortfall of $210,000. If we look at the 20-year, again, we're stretching out the debt more, but the cash flow shortfall is going to be less. That cash flow shortfall is $120,000. Well, in order for the city, by way of an INS tax rate, to cover that shortfall of $120,000 based on current property values, is 4.24 cents per $100 valuation. And for every $100,000 home taxable value, that's about $3.54 increase on a monthly basis.
What was the rollback? Sorry, Mr.
Mr.
I understand that when it's to pay debt, there's no rollback, correct?
Correct. Okay.
And also keep in mind, I'm using the current property values as they are right now. The certified value, $298 million. And I don't know if you've received your preliminary values yet. Most folks have, but I understand most
Yes,
of them.
we have, but
Okay.
I have, but
Yeah.
I haven't.
Okay, yeah, and that's the one thing that's pretty consistent in Texas is that the property values tend to go up, especially now with all the activity going on. And so that tax rate that you'll need in the future might change also if property values grow, or if your sales tax collections grow, because it's just less of a shortfall you have to come up with. Are there any questions on the tax rate and the shortfall?
Without including operating expenses, we're talking about a revenue of $525,000 that needs to come in through sales tax or other sources of revenue.
Yes, correct.
General fund, revenue generated through the, at the building and so forth.
Yeah, any legal available revenue, correct?
Yeah, the holders of the refunding bonds, Councilman, are solely looking to their ad valorem tax.
Right.
Their credit is solely their ad valorem tax.
Based on that, yeah.
If they didn't get paid, they
But-
would mandamus the city council to let a tax petition to pay them.
But
But
from
the
operating-
bondholders,
Right.
the bondholders don't care where the money is.
Right.
As long as the money's deposited in your debt service fund, it could be any lawful source. I mean, for example, some portion of your 1 1/4 cents general fund sales tax, or, maybe I guess 1%, or whatever, Phelps revenues, whatever. It doesn't have to be an ad valorem tax. But I think Victor is correctly showing what a bondholder would be looking at, and what we would be telling investors, this would be the tax rate it would take to pay those bonds off on each of those terms.
Right, from an investor standpoint, that's what we're looking at in revenue. But from an operational standpoint, we need to say, okay, we need to raise $525,000. Ad valorem, sales tax, whatever the case may be.
What is the various interest rates on these bonds?
These are, right now we're being conservative and we are using anywhere from a 3.25 to a 4% interest rate on these bonds, which today we just sold a 30-year bond and that came in the 3.5% rate, which is just pretty, we're still in a historically low interest rate environment. But really, what's going to make the difference is just what term. If you go shorter term, of course, you can get a lower interest rate. But
So
there's
it
still
goes up from 15 years up to 30 years.
Yes, sir. It goes up. Yes, it's just like a 15-year mortgage is going to get a lower interest rate than a 30-year. Same thing here. But regardless of the term, there's still going to be some type of shortfall. You have a question?
My question was regardless, we're gonna have to raise the taxes in order to make the payment. And if, for instance, in that 15-year payment, raising it up that 0.0740, if it's beyond it doesn't have to go to
Voters?
the voters, is what I'm asking. Okay.
I have the values for this year, and they're 324,638,730.
Well, that'll improve the figures, because now we're working with more values. So it might not have to be, let's say that 20-year might not have to be 4 cents. It could be, just under 4 cents. It could be in the 3-cent range. And so the larger that property value, the lower the tax rate you have to set to cover that shortfall of 120.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so what we run
But based
those-
on, just asking the question based on the scenario that we have up there.
Yes.
Like, right now, we're showing that we might need 7 cents, but because of the increase of property value, that might even lower
Yes.
to maybe a 5 cents.
Yeah,
Depending on the.
yeah, it'll have an impact, and we'll rerun that based on the $325 million figure, and then just show you what the impact would be. It would be, basically what's gonna result in is a lower tax rate that you're gonna need to come up with that tax, with that shortfall. But yeah, this is probably the most, I guess, like I said, economically and financially probably the easiest route, but of course, I'm not sitting where you're sitting, and there's also the political side of it too, about raising tax and everything, but this will not throw you into a rollback situation or a situation where you have to vote your tax rate that you're proposing for next fiscal year.
Victor,
Yes.
what's the prediction on interest rates staying stable or rising?
Oh, gosh, we have, the rates have been rising here in the past 3 to 4 weeks. We've had a sell-off in bonds and interest rates are rising, but it hasn't been, as drastic as everybody was expecting. My crystal ball is pretty foggy and murky once you get past, a month or two. I think for the next, by the time we lock in the interest rates here in late June, early July, I think we should probably be about similar shape that we're in right now. But again, I won't bet on it. So right now, interest rates are still good.
Stable.
Yes, sir, still.
The next slide. The next slide.
Ms. Wynn, historically, the assessed value you receive at this time of year stays pretty constant when you get certified July 23rd?
It lowers a little bit based on the disputes of the property values and also with new people qualifying for new exemptions, but it's not so drastic. Yeah. Last year, we had a 298 million property value. So I don't expect for it to go below.
You're saying it's.
324,638.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying,
It's quite a rise.
yeah.
Where did you get those numbers come?
I received this letter on April 23rd. Well, that's when it was issued. April 23rd, 2016.
So it would be nice to have had them over here so we can see more actual
Yeah,
ending, like she said about the disputes and all that.
Yeah, and really, I like to use more, I guess, the certified values. We know that the 298 is in the books now. I really, because it's a higher value, it's just, I don't want to, I'd rather give you kind of worst case scenario figures here. And so that was our purpose.
Yeah, because these will give you a false rate.
And it also depends on what Ms. Moreno said. Most of the county appraisal districts are going to be conservative and give you a lower property value. And then by the time they certify it in late July, it's going to be higher than what they told you. But again, all counties are different. Some are well known to give a high preliminary value. By the time they certify it, it's actually lower than what they told you. So because of that, I just like to use the more conservative figure, the lower one for this.
And that's what happened last year. Last year, they give us a high value, and then by the time they certified it, it had gone down.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go down drastically. It's not that many people that dispute their values.
We don't necessarily do it on a time basis.
Maybe it's
We
coming
don't
in
do
last
it on
year.
a time basis. They do it.
Oh, right,
And that's what I heard too, so.
yeah.
Oh,
And then also, we have a new appraisal,
Chief
person,
appraiser.
chief appraiser.
the chief appraiser.
So from last year to this year, we have a new one, so I don't know what this new one is gonna do.
Maybe you might actually show up to our meetings.
Isn't she? Yeah, maybe she will.
Ryan is not there anymore, right?
No, he left.
He left.
And so this will now take us to the next slide, as Councilman Tejada indicated. You know, we have. What if we look at the entirety of the facility, because sales tax are coming in to support it, but also rental fees are coming in to as terms of revenue. But then we also have to add on the expense of maintaining and operating that facility there. Because I know that the city has, past few years, already helped out that facility be operated and maintained. So here we're just taking a look at everything, just to show you that even with the rental fees, there's still going to be a shortfall that the city has to come up with to keep that facility afloat, and also the debt afloat too. So here we're looking at the two revenue components of the community center. We have the sales tax collections. Again, I'm just assuming the $404,000. The rental fees and miscellaneous, that's a budget figure that Ms. Moreno provided us. That's about $210,000. So the total revenues of that facility is about $614,000. We know we have the debt of the 07 issue, and then the upcoming restructuring, the 2015 debt payment. But then we also have the maintenance and operations of that facility, and this is a budget figure we also received from Ms. Moreno of $302,000. And
Excuse me, Victor,
yes.
can we stop there, because I was just asking Ms. Turner, those numbers seem to be incorrect, because it seems to be including, I guess, repairs being done to the building, so that's not an actual maintenance operation on a
No, it
regular,
doesn't.
on a regular year.
No, the 302 is the actual operations, because I took out the 875,000 of the settlement.
Okay.
And
So
it
can
comes
we
in-
get a breakdown of what that $302 was?
Absolutely. I don't have a copy for everybody, but I can show.
Yeah, and the good news is that that number is conservative too. When she shared that, I was looking at the year-to-date actuals that she kept there. I just used the budget figures, but I was looking at the year-to-date actuals, and you're below this $302,000 expense that you budgeted was going to occur for the facility. You're actually below that right now, so.
Can you read those out, John?
Yeah, are we gonna get some copies? Yeah, and it's also on your budget, no, let me tell you, the 337,000, that sales tax, the $205,000, it includes 140,000 of rental of the civic center, plus other little rentals that she has. It also includes the.
Can you get year-to-date from the previous year?
From the fire scene?
Is concessions in year two, Ms. Moreno?
It's also included there, yeah. Concession revenue.
Or is that a?
It's included on the rental fee.
No, from the
Rentals
I put it all together.
miscellaneous?
the previous year, excuse me.
You have the breakdown on your budget? Yeah. And then the 120,000 that is transferred from other funds, that is coming, that's something that we had planned to do from the hotel motel tax. And I talked to Gloria about that, and she does have proof of debts to Next to bids. Thank you. So we can go ahead and do the transfer.
Why don't we have concessions as a separate line item?
Why don't we have them on I wanted to concise this report. I just wanted to provide the most information, because you have all this information in your budget.
But it would seem
So I
like,
just wanted to concise it.
So like, just like real quick, Tony, like, on contractual, there's 5,000 for the year, but 97,000 budgeted.
Budgeted, yes.
I don't
So
know.
it has not been used, most of it. And that's where all the bartenders get paid from, and any other kind of services that you require to do operations of the civic center.
Operations which would also be, you know, any type of maintenance that
Maintenance.
gets
So
done.
so that's what I'm saying, like, I mean, just look at that, I mean, that's a significant difference. I mean, that's what we.
And the reason for that is because last year, they had somebody to clean the civic center, and we were paying for them. Now we have salaries. Now we have
I
these
know,
persons
but-
that we.
But just looking at this, I mean, when we're looking at numbers like this with 302, so let's just say, you know, this is what, 8 months into the year, 7 months, whatever, like October, November, December, January, March, April, May. So 8 months into the year, so at 8 months, we're at 5,000, so let's just say the next 4 months that doubles, that's $10,000. So that's a difference of 87,000, so I mean, that knocks that bottom number, 165, you cut it in half.
You also include.
That's what I'm saying, that's $87,000 that we're talking about.
We are also including on contractor, and that's what Mr. Tejada is saying.
No, no,
You have the
I
total.
understand that, but I'm just saying that, like,
It includes
year
legal fees,
to
it includes
date.
back fees, it includes all the contract services that we have to pay for.
but isn't that included as part of the contract for rental and so forth? Aren't those costs spread out to the number of rentals we have out that were?
Because the cleaning fees are charged to the person who rents. That's part of.
And that's what I'm saying, I mean, I understand, like, if that's, you know, that's, lawyers' fees, all the other contract services, but, I mean, that's $87,000, which is, it's a good thing, because it's a plus. So if we're looking for years forward, I mean, that's money that, you know, we need to adjust this budget and not be, budgeting $97,000 on this line
Yes.
item, when we're only spending $10,000 per
The
year.
problem is because what was coming out of that budget number is now coming out of the M&O, right?
Right, well, you also have to take in consideration that last year, she was renting the civic center a lot more than she's renting it now. So all the expenses are gonna be a lot less, and that's the reason why I put actual amount year to date, so that way you will see, this is what I budgeted from last year. This is what was spent last year.
Yeah, no, yeah, I understand, but I'm not saying anything bad on you, I understand these are numbers here, but I'm just looking at it going forward to get an actual grip on the actual numbers. Okay, well, we're budgeting 364 in expenditures, but it looks like we're only gonna spend 250. Well, that's 114,000
And we
in the
try.
positive that can be used towards the debt. So
Yes,
that-
and
that fits that
we